Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, safe to say that the WNBA playoffs did not go the way we anticipated it, huh?
You're not lying, bro. You're
Woo,
not lying.
we are here at the finals, and it does not look like what our predictions were. But that made for really good basketball. We had some really strong series. NBA Media Day is passed, and a lot of comments have been made for all 30 teams that should give us, a good understanding of where everybody's heads are at. TV, I mean, we're in a really good spot as far as basketball is concerned right now. The playoffs went exactly as, planned, which is to have a very exciting first two rounds. And in terms of the NBA, I mean, dude, we're
We're right
only a
there.
couple of days away from having preseason basketball. I know that's not the
This
most hype thing in the
Saturday.
world, but come on,
Yeah,
man.
this Saturday to start a preseason ball, guys. The NBA season's back. The WNBA Finals are starting. This is going to be released on Thursday, tomorrow, by the time you're listening to this. So there's a lot of great basketball going on. And thank you for tapping into the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, man. There's going to be a great episode. We're obviously going to talk about the WNBA Finals predictions. That's going to be pretty crazy. Shout out to the Indiana Fever for somehow making it all the way to the very last, it felt like to the very last minute, Jay, of trying to make it to the WNBA Finals. Probably one of the biggest bombshells in WNBA history. We're going to end up talking about that in today's episode. And we're going to also get into more 21 Qs for the NBA season as we continue to preview that. So it's going to be an action-packed episode, Jay. So get ready, buckle up, and get ready to lock in because we have a lot to talk about. But before we do that, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links will be found in the descriptions down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. That's where you're going to find the picks. That's where you're going to find the news. All of the post-game reacts to the WNBA playoff games you can find over there. All of the clips. Make sure you follow us over there. That's where you're going to see us most active. If you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, please remember to subscribe. We review all the good stuff. We appreciate all of your support. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Also, check out the YouTube Shorts because we post some short-form content over there. And yeah, just make sure you tap into the Hit Your Free Throws podcast everywhere and anywhere. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Yes, sir.
100%. Before we go into the WNBA Finals, Jay, we're going to have some great conversations about that. And we're going to talk about how I don't think either of us expected both of these teams to be in the finals in the first place.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about yesterday's game, Jay. Because even though that probably wasn't even the biggest news from that day, which we're going to get into later, I'm telling you, bro, the Indiana Fever pushed the MVP of the league, the number 2 seed, Las Vegas Aces, who, mind you, went on a 16-game win streak to end the season. The Cardiac Kids, the Hospital Fever, take them all the way to Game 5. They almost win it, but the Aces pull it through. They win Game 5. 65 combined points from Asia Wilson and Jackie Young. It felt like those were the only two that could score in the fourth quarter until Chelsea Gray and Dana Evans started to show up in the overtime period. But Jay, your thoughts on the series in general? Shouting out the Fever for even making it this far. We're going to talk more about the injury stuff and like how it even got worse for the Fever in this game. But at the end of the day, congratulations to the Aces. That they're going to be back in the finals for the third time in 4 years, man. Just a crazy dynasty that they got building over there.
Yeah, I mean, the simplicity behind it is just to say that, like, this Fever team is going to be dangerous when they get right. Like, we were talking about it before we even started the podcast, and it's like, you mean to tell me that some of your key names did not play throughout this entire postseason, and you even had Kelsey Mitchell go down in this game at one point, and you look at the circumstances around this entire postseason run, and TV, we talked about it from the very beginning of the playoffs. We were like, this team's just too hurt. Like, it's not that they're not talented. It's just that they're too hurt, where it just feels like the war of attrition was going to kind of run its course. And in a sense, you can make the argument that it kind of did. The Kelsey Mitchell thing felt like kind of the exclamation point to like, yo, you only got but so much left on you. It kind of reminds you a lot of, do you remember that New York Knicks run, TV? A season or two ago, where it just felt like everything was like progressing into this.
This was 2 years ago. Yeah, this was 2 years ago.
It just felt like everything was progressing in the direction of like, yo, the Knicks are nice, but not this year, bro. Just not this year. And it kind of culminated with the Jalen Brunson injury, where that was like the big nail in the coffin that felt like, all right, I don't necessarily know if the Knicks are going to be able to get through this thing, even if they come out of this series healthy. I mean, even if they come out this series on top. they're not gonna win an NBA championship
Yeah.
like this, right? And as far as the WNBA is concerned with the Fever, they were on the same trajectory where it was like they get out of the first round and you're looking at it like that was insane. But you look at the circumstances around it, you're like, you win a buzzer, you went off a buzzer beater with Aaliyah Boston, you have a couple of things go your way. You get further along and you're looking at the Aces series, they start off the series hot, you're like, they can't, not really, not possibly, right?
Yeah, but it's starting to creep in your mind, though. It's
Yeah,
starting to creep in
but
your
it
mind.
starts
It
to
might actually
build
happen.
this weird momentum for themselves where you're like, wait a minute, really? And then, game 5 happens. And even in that game, there was a significant portion of this game where in the beginning, the Aces kind of were on cruise control. I'm not going to say that it wasn't a close game. Obviously, the first quarter was neck and neck at 23 even. But at the same time, there was a point where the Aces had a pretty strong, like 10-point lead. And
The third
here
quarter, this was the third quarter for sure. That's where I thought the Aces were going to blow this game wide open.
Yeah, and then here comes the Fever out of nowhere, just like, you know what? We're not going outside. Like we just don't care. We're not going outside. And the game even got pushed into overtime, which just goes to show you that this team, like, TV, you praised Stephanie White so much when we had our Coach of the Year conversation a couple weeks back, and this is just a further culmination of like, yo, like this team, they're in good hands. There's good development here. The Ari McDonald thing early in the season, what I think was a good spark that said like, yo, they can kind of work with anything as long as they just continue to work within the system that they're playing with right now. And the talent has to follow. TV, we were talking about this off pod, but like Indiana has the 10th pick in this upcoming WNBA draft. You get Caitlin back, you get Kelsey back, you make a good strong pick at number 10. You still have Aaliyah Boston locked up. Like, this is a team that's like treading in the right direction, bro. They feel like one or two little solid moves on the margins away. And I felt like that DeWanna Bonner signing earlier in the year, like Slick was gonna be one of those moves. Of course, it didn't pay out the way they expected it to, and it's actually worked out very well for the
I was going
Phoenix
to say for the
Mercury. We'll talk
Mercury,
about that a little
yeah.
later. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I kind of felt like that was gonna be the move that kind of helped push them over the hump. It ended up not playing out that way. I would not be surprised if next year is that year for the Indiana Fever where it's like, okay, now's our turn. Now is our turn.
Yeah, they feel like they're right on the cusp, man. And like you mentioned, the the medical gods, the WNBA gods, feel like it was trying to take things away, even little by little in this game 5. Jay,
Yeah.
Kelsey Mitchell, I'm gonna read it. This is in her words. She had to post on her story after the game just to kind of give more clarity of what's happened. She
Yeah.
suffered from something called rab rhabdomyolysis. It means like her muscle stopped working in her leg. So apparently her leg went numb and like she didn't feel anything for 7 seconds, and it just wasn't producing enough blood. So literally, her body was
Oh,
shutting down on her, which ended up um ending her season at right at that. So it was a scary situation. Apparently, like people like have died from this sort of thing, and so just like a crazy situation because like she was like holding onto her knee for a little while during that third quarter, but the fact that she had that sort of almost like sort of tragic event. I mean, it was a crazy situation in the third
yeah.
quarter. The fact that that ended up happening, they had to pour out the game. It felt like it was over there. They fought back all the way to the point where it felt like they maybe had a chance to win the game, but then Aaliyah Boston got her sixth foul and they had to take her out the game. So the closing lineup was like Lexi Hall, Odyssey Sims. Like it was a crazy lineup just to end up that game in general. And to say that they were still right there, Jay, in
Yeah.
overtime until probably like 2 minutes left. That's when I felt like, you know what, this game is probably getting away from them. Like the Aces were hitting crazy shots. Even a healthy Fever team couldn't stop those shots the way that the Aces were just was on fire to start that overtime. But they really fought till their last breath, Jay, and they were able to pull through and like almost win the series. Shout out to them. Shout out to Odyssey Sims. Shout out to Kelsey Mitchell for freaking playing until her body literally gave up on her. Her leg
Yeah.
literally gave up on her. So the whole Stephanie White thing, I still believe she deserves to win like Coach of the Year, and I think this playoff run kind of like doubles down on that for me. But the next player up mentality, Aaliyah Boston finally showing up late in this series. then getting just so much contributions from anyone they roster, not even anyone they add to the rotation, anyone they roster. Shout out to the Indiana Fever, and they were so close to winning. Like you said, Jay, next season with Caitlin Clark back, we don't know. Again, we don't know how much this team is going to change because next offseason might be the craziest in WNBA history with the new
Yeah.
CBA that hopefully that they agree to very soon. It looks like it's not going to be going a lot slower than usual. But just congratulations to them for like even making it this far. And I'm not even gonna say that the Lynx, or no, not the Lynx, the Aces should have finished this earlier because we
Yeah.
see what they did to the Atlanta Dream, and now we saw to what limit they took the MVP and the Las Vegas Aces in general. It's more, instead of saying you know these two teams should have finished business earlier. We need to show love to the Fever for even fighting this hard to make it to this point anyway. Good win for the Aces at the end. The Fever just fought literally everything they had left, and they didn't have anything left, Jay.
Yeah, this was one of those where like going down with the ship, like whatever, cliche phrase you want to use, this was all of it and then some, bro. This was one of those series in general. I don't know, one of these playoff runs for the Indiana Fever that, I mean, a lot of people are going to play back when they finally do get their just due. Like, I think this is going to be the postseason run that they play back. That's like the initial building block of like, okay, now we know that we're the team we're supposed to be because we went through these things. On this podcast, we use NBA analogies for the WNBA a lot because a lot of our NBA listeners are, coming over and, they're trying to lock into the WNBA as well, but they have more of an NBA mindset similar to us. And
Mm-hmm.
I think an NBA equivalent, not necessarily bar for bar, right, but I think in a very similar manner is the Oklahoma City Thunder when they had their series against Dallas, right? That felt like a series where, of course, you look at Luka Doncic at the time, you're asking yourself whether or not you felt like he's the best player in the series as comparison to a player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But you look back at this series, especially with them losing in 6 games, and you wonder with the Oklahoma City Thunder, like, okay, a lot of people thought, you get Chet back, you have Jalen Williams, you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We're still building out the depth with this young team. Like, they come off of that loss to Dallas, and it's like, is that going to be like the defining moment that helps propel them into that next level? Like, you just came off of winning 50 plus games, top seeded in the Western Conference. You're one of the best teams in the NBA in the regular season, but you get flamed out in the first round. Now you have to ask yourself, like, yo, where do we go from there now? That team knew in that series that they were a few possessions away from just flat out being the better team than Dallas. I think when you look at Indiana, they were quite literally a couple players away from being really the better team, even in this series against Las Vegas. Las Vegas, yeah. If you put Caitlin Clark healthy into the lineup, Sophie Cunningham into the lineup healthy, you are able to keep Kelsey Mitchell put together through this
Yeah,
game 5, right? I think this series goes differently. I think even that outcome of this game goes differently. We're having this question of like, yo, did the Indiana Fever like within basically no time, because we're basically talking about what, 2 back-to-back drafts,
yeah,
Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, and then you come into this season, make the WNBA Finals. Indiana Fever go from one of the worst franchises in the WNBA 2, 3 seasons later, they're in the WNBA Finals. It's the same thing. Not the same exact thing, but the Oklahoma City Thunder were in that same conversation 2 seasons ago. One of the worst teams in the NBA. That's how they were able to pick number 2 overall and get Chet Holmgren. 2 seasons later, 3 seasons later, they're in conversation as one of the top teams in the Western Conference and won a championship. I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana strikes gold next year. I'm just throwing that out there now so nobody's surprised. This is a team that I think everybody needs to be wary of. And even with this crazy offseason that's going to be built through the CBA problems and everything like that, I think Indiana's going to be a mainstay.
yeah. No, 100%. I'm excited to see them next year, and hopefully as healthy as we can, man. This team was just so fun to watch, even to watch in the WNBA playoffs. Imagine with a full roster. I think they're going to be super fun and also have the depth, the talent to be able to go super far.
Yeah.
But Jay, they still didn't come out with the victory. It was the Las Vegas Aces,
Yeah.
and they are going to the third WNBA Finals in 4 years as they take on the Phoenix Mercury.
Yep.
Both these teams coming off crazy series. I don't know about you, Jay. I felt like these two teams were like number 3 and number 4 best teams coming into this
Yeah.
WNBA season.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a foregone conclusion we were going to get a rematch between the Liberty and the Lynx just because of the way that they were able to bring back all their rosters the same, especially with the Phoenix Mercury. You got to remember, there's only 2 returning players this year on the team. They
Yeah.
completely changed their entire team, and they were able to figure things out and go to the WNBA Finals. The Aces make it to the WNBA Finals once again. The dynasty continues. We're going to talk about the series, though, and this is going to be a very interesting series between 2 top 3 MVP candidates, one of them being the MVP in Asia Wilson. Alyssa Thomas, another chance at trying to win a WNBA championship. Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are you going to look for in this series, and how excited are you for it?
I think the biggest thing is Phoenix showed me, and we talked about it before the postseason started. They showed me they can close games, TV. This was a team that struggled throughout the regular season to kind of get their bearings. And we understood what that had to do with that, why that was the case. This is a team that was basically thrown together essentially overnight over the course of a couple of free agency moves. You get DeWanna Bonner midway through the season, and she's also another acquisition you kind of have to get affiliated with the team. DeWanna Bonner in this series, she starts off the series like 0 of 9 from 3, and then goes absolutely nuclear. I think 3 of 4, something of that, including like a crazy deep one that made her like second in WNBA history and made threes or something like that. In terms of postseason play, this team to me, I feel like the easy question for Phoenix left is, can their stars do it one more time? One of my favorite player in the league is Satu Sabali, and she was one of the best second half performers in this past series. I think she was averaging like 12.3 points per game in the second half of games over the course of the postseason so far. And she's been a big part of keeping them in games in the second half and then closing out these wins. The question is, can they just do it one more time? I don't think this might be a smidget disrespectful, but I don't think that I don't think the Aces are better than any team that Phoenix has beat on the road here. Truthfully, like I truthfully believe that. I don't think that the Aces are better than either team that Phoenix has beat to get here. And that's no disrespect to Asia Wilson. Jackie Young has also played very up to par over the last handful of games. But I just think as a full body of work is considered, this Phoenix Mercury team has seen the worst of the worst. I think that Minnesota team was as bad as it was gonna get, and they took their best shot and then some. I mean, if you look at that closeout game, I mean, even then that Minnesota team was fighting to the very end, and they had that Game 5 closeout without Nafisa Collier, and there was a stretch where it looked like they were going to win by 15, and they claw all the way back, win by I think by about 5 or 6 when the game ends, and they close out a game that they just had to have at home because let's be honest, not that Phee would have been able to play the next game, but if we're being honest, this is one of those where like you got to get it done on your home floor in Phoenix. It couldn't get done up like that, and for them to play the way they played, I just think that this is a team that, as far as I'm concerned, this might be bold to say, but I think it's Phoenix's championship to lose. This is the first time we're having a 7-game series in the finals, and I think that this is a series where like everything I've seen from them and the resilience they've had says this is going to be like a 4-1, 4-2 series. And it's just going to be up to them to actually close some of these games out.
This is the thing is with this series, Jay, is I'm kind of on your same wavelength, but also not in the
Okay.
fact that I think Phoenix has been the better overall team. I think they faced the stronger competition. I mean, speaking of Sawtooth, man, I've been talking about this like every series. First, she has to face Breonna Stewart, WNBA future WNBA Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Next, Nafisa Collier, and
Yeah.
now freaking Asia Wilson. She's going through the freaking 3-headed monster over there, man. And the Phoenix Mercury, throughout these playoffs, I've been a lot more impressed with the way that they were able to play, especially late in these games. And what surprised me, Jay, is we went into this playoffs thinking that the Phee Mercury were going to be a top heavy team versus like a lot of these guys, but they're getting good production in certain games, especially someone like Sammy Whitcomb, who's been fantastic all playoffs long. Dewana
Yes.
Bonner, even though she struggled for for most of the series in the last one, she came through in the elimination game. You have Monique Okoa Makani, who's been very good for them. Surprisingly, with Koya Copper not playing, the best basketball, Sata being on and off, they've been able to be, you know, um, I would say make it up for by the rest of the supporting cast. And when I look at the Vegas Aces, which is funny because both these are the top two benches like in the playoffs so far. But when
Mm,
it comes to like winning these games, especially late, I think the Aces, in my opinion, get maybe too caught up in Jackie Young, Asia Wilson basketball. It becomes like a two-man game for the most part, and you don't really get much other people involved throughout most of it. I don't think they could play that sort of game versus the Phoenix Mercury because they could match up with them talent for talent.
mm.
I'm more worried about the Aces' depth, even though they've had their moments in the series beforehand. But against lesser competition, you've seen people like Sammy Whitcomb hit clutch shots versus the Minnesota Lynx, and a lot of these other girls playing, up to the competition. While the Aces, I just don't know if I could trust that with some of these girls who've been very much up and down. Even someone like Chelsea Gray, she has good games, but at times she even falls to the wayside in the two-man action of Jackie Young and Asia Wilson. So I would say I trust the Mercury more in this matchup, but man, Asia Wilson has had Alyssa Thomas and Dewana Bonner's number for years now.
Yeah.
Is that going to continue? I mean, 3-1 series win with the Aces when both Dewana and Alyssa Thomas were part of the Connecticut Sun back in 2022. They won a season series here, multiple games where they've won comfortably. Is this just a bad matchup for Alyssa Thomas? Is she going to be able to shake this Asia Wilson, curse that feels like this has been following her throughout her entire career? I'm not sure. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one.
I think this is going to be one of those series that, first of all, obviously this is already historic as it is, right? Because of the fact first 7 game series ever, it'll be a good litmus test for seeing what these extended series look like. Something I felt like in a sense we kind of should have had for the longest. I always thought the single elimination first round was a little questionable, given how hard these teams play, and then the fact that there's only 10. There's only 8 teams that make the postseason as it is. So this year's change of having 3 game early series, then progressing to 5 and progressing to 7 and things of that nature. I think that that's good. I think that's just good for the sport. So seeing it in a 7 game series will also give us a real good chance to see what the adaptation within the series is going to be because it's another 2 games to have to consider, right? But I think more than anything, like you said, is getting that monkey off their back. And this team, the Phoenix Mercury, as a franchise, obviously none of these players were on the team last time they made the finals, but I believe this franchise hasn't made the WNBA finals since 2021, right? So this is also an organization that's kind of refamiliarizing themselves with playing in these big moments. And of course, during the postseason, they've done very well of rising to the occasion. Again, it's going to just come down to being able to do it one more time. And they've slayed 2 of the biggest dragons in this postseason. I said it beforehand. I genuinely believe that, like, the Aces, when we had our conversation in the postseason discussion, I remember even letting you know that I felt like the Aces were, if we said 3 and 4, that I felt like the Aces were 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that goes to tell me, just based off of my own personal analysis, that you take down New York and you take down Minnesota, and more particularly the Minnesota thing, you throw out, game 4 withstanding with the situation with that and Phee going down and everything, like not being able to play in an elimination game and all that, because that's, of course, understandable. But this is a team that took down 2 of the biggest juggernauts coming into the postseason that kind of felt like that was going to be the trajectory that led into the WNBA finals all over again. It didn't happen. You take the 2 biggest dogs out, and now you get the Aces, who to me are not better than those other 2 teams. Like I think Phoenix has taken the worst shots and delivered under the bright lights the most. I think this is, like I said, it'll be interesting to see how the series goes, but I'm gonna go, if I'm gonna pick my series winner, I think Phoenix is gonna win. Shout out Satu Sabali. I think she's gonna have a really strong series because she's had a really strong postseason. And I think they're gonna get it. I think they're gonna get it done in 6 games. I'm gonna respect Vegas because at the end of the day, I think that they're just too talented up top, especially with what Jackie Young and what Asia Wilson have been able to do thus far. But like I said, this just feels like a series that this Phoenix Mercury team has built themselves up to kind of not coast through, but to hurdle over. Given the fact that I think the worst of it for this postseason they've already experienced.
Yeah, this is definitely interesting. I've been going back and forth because I do think the Aces having the MVP of the league, Asia Wilson, and Jackie Young getting right at the right time is going to be absolutely key for them because if they can have two of the three best players in this series, that could change a whole lot.
Yeah.
Maybe the Phoenix Mercury having more of those in the top 10 is going to be a big difference too. But someone else who's been like really trying to step up lately, Chelsea Gray, if she can continue to go on that good run. I mean, she was absolutely clutching that overtime period versus the Indiana Fever last night. They just honestly, I know they're gonna get enough from Jackie Young and Asia Wilson. It's just who else is gonna come to the party?
Yeah.
Melissa Smith, up and down. I'm not a big fan of their center rotation still. I think that she's gonna play a big role, but how much is she gonna be effective against the front court of Alyssa Thomas and Sati Sabali? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I wouldn't be surprised if the Aces do end up winning it on the talent and the fact that they're just that they've gone through some like pretty tough series as well in the playoffs. But I think I've just been more impressed about the Phoenix Mercury have been able to do all playoffs long. I am going to go with the Mercury just like you, but I'm going to go in 7 games. I think the first ever 7-game series in WNBA history is going to be a full 7. And I think it's going to continue to go that way. Alyssa Thomas, obviously, still trying to chase that first ever championship. She's going to be extra hungry. I think you could see just that energy that she brought, even versus a team like the Minnesota Lynx, where, let's be honest, many people had them comfortably the favorites over the Phoenix Mercury at the time. And they were able just to out hustle them, out grit them. And I think that type of energy, which the Aces really didn't face leading up to it, is going to be key here as well. And I think they're going to keep the energy up. Satu's is going to have to play big again because now she's probably facing against the best player in the W. And I just trust the Mercury bench more right now. Hopefully Dana Evans proves me wrong. Hopefully Melissa Smith proves me wrong. But looking up and down this roster of the Aces, Gustafson has had some solid minutes here and there, but just the production out that the Mercury has been able to get throughout most of the playoffs, I trust them more. I'm going to pick them in 7.
I get it. I wouldn't be surprised if the series goes that long, bro. I honestly wouldn't, because this feels like the great crescendo we should have for this season that's been so special as it is. I also just felt like this, like you said, this Phoenix Mercury team is on fire right now. So it'll be interesting to see. Well, like you said, it kicks off Friday, so we'll see how game 1 goes.
Yeah.
And I actually hope, for basketball fandom's sake, I actually hope this goes the distance because it has a chance to be a really special series.
I hope so too. Also, just quickly, my X factor here, Jewel Lloyd. We need you to stand up. We need you to be that third option that we were hoping for coming into the season. Hopefully, fourth option. She had a pretty good overtime in the last game. Hopefully, she can use that momentum, and they're gonna need her big time because again, not a lot of depth on that Aces team. Hopefully, she can provide more there. Yeah. But yeah, that's what we got for the WNBA Finals. Let us know what you guys think down below. Who do you got winning? Mercury versus Aces should be a good one, and hopefully Asia Wilson gives us another series for the history books. Man, she's been having a fantastic playoff run, and can't wait to see what she's able to do next round. Jay, let's move on and talk more WNBA because on the week of the WNBA Finals starting, the first ever 7-game series, lots of good basketball, by the way. You should definitely be tapping in.
Yeah.
The WNBA probably had its biggest day of the season so far, and it was a press conference. Because after the Minnesota Lynx, I think this is like a day or two, I think 2 days after they were eliminated by the Phoenix Mercury, exit interviews, pretty much standard within all of sports. We see this a lot with NBA teams as well. And Nafisa Collier came into the press conference room to do her year-end interview, and she came in with a piece of paper. And in that piece of paper, multiple piece of paper. the piece of paper that could very well start the downfall of Kathy Engelbert.
Yo.
Because she went up there and started her year-end interview talking 4 to 5 minutes straight and just completely going off on WNBA leadership. Dissing Kathy Engelbert, revealing personal conversations where they had where Kathy Engelbert was putting down players, talking about how the WNBA, even though with all this new money coming in from the expansion teams and stuff, are not, compensating the players right. She went off like crazy, Jay, and it
Yeah.
became in a day where you had Game 5 of the Fever versus Aces, which was a fantastic game, one of the better games of the season.
Mhm.
This was still the biggest talking point, and not just the biggest talking point of the WNBA, but the biggest talking point in sports that day.
Mhm.
Jay, I mean, I gave my thoughts on this yesterday. I'm standing with Phee, obviously, pay the players right. And I'm glad that she brought up a lot of those issues to the public now because clearly the WNBA wasn't going to do stuff behind the scenes. So, of course, she had to do something a bit more out there, which I'm glad she did. But I want to hear your thoughts on it, Jay. After hearing that whole interview, hearing that whole speech, your thoughts on what your girl Phee had to say.
Yeah, man. So that's the thing, right? Fee's felt like she's gotten hold a good amount this year. I feel like that's safe to say.
Yeah.
You can tell that Phee feels like she's been hold in a handful of different ways this year, right? You look at all the conversations around Unrivaled starting at the very beginning of the season. Remember, a lot of people were questioning her stance as a member of the WNBA Player Association in this conversation for the next collective bargaining agreement while also being a co-founder of Unrivaled. And remember, her integrity within the conversation was being questioned earlier on this season. We progressed through the regular season. She looks like the best player in ball. And I was talking about it all season long that I felt like she was finally going to get her get back when it came to winning WNBA MVP. She falls short. By what logic? I'll let the voters decide that one. But it felt like this was a year where she was supposed to win WNBA MVP, not comfortably, but she had a really, really good case to finally be the one that's on top this time, as far as the voting was concerned. Falls short. Gets hurt in a very controversial fashion in a scrum situation with Alyssa Thomas that leads to, the eventual injury that leads to her not being able to play in game 4, a critical, win or go home scenario game 4, by the way, on the road in a hostile environment against the Phoenix Mercury. You don't have your best player. So you go to the exit interview and you're looking at everything that's happened this entire season. And you pair that with the fact that the backdrop of this year, barring whoever wins this championship, is we're about to have the craziest summer in WNBA history. I know Shams might have led some people astray when they thought that this NBA offseason was going to be nuts. No, 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 no. Check the WNBA free agency list. It's basically everybody. It's basically everybody.
Yeah.
You pair that with the fact that we have 2 expansion teams and the first official summer for the Golden State Valkyries coming off a really strong year where they made the playoffs in their inaugural year. And you just put that whole storyline together and it says like, Phee basically went in there and said, let me give what a true exit interview is, which is, let me give my last true feelings on both this
Unfiltered
season.
feelings.
Yeah, true unfiltered feelings and leave a lasting impression on what I feel like the state of not only this season, but this upcoming summer is. And she didn't waste any time by any means. And I think the main takeaway that I came from it, talking about the lack of accountability and leadership, obviously, following the incident with her injury wise, she talked about the officiating situation and the fact that guys are not held, women and men are not held accountable at the officiating space in terms of properly refereeing the games without trying to, overblow the whistle, but also not just throwing their hands up and lifting
Inconsistent, just
every.
super
Yeah.
inconsistent. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of inconsistency, particularly in relation to the physicality of play on the court, right? Like you don't want to see everything be a ticky-tack foul. That's one of the bigger issues that the NBA tends to have here and there, right? Is that it feels like the game is led so offensively based that it almost feels like they were getting too soft as a league. The WNBA kind of taking a completely opposite approach in terms of it feels like every whistle gets swallowed, and it seems like a lot of stuff was kind of going over the heads of true
See with the
officiating.
injuries, man. If you just look at the injury list, and that will
Yeah.
tell you a lot of the story.
Yeah. So I think my biggest takeaway overall is my girl said what she had to say. She did it in a way that I felt like was as respectful as you could while also making sure that her point was clear, right? She had a prepared statement. She
Yeah.
came in with a prepared statement to make it clear not only that she meant business, but that she understood the platform that she was on. Because we have to be honest, this is the last time she's going to be under a WNBA related microscope for the rest of the season. Truthfully, right? Outside of anything that comes out reporting wise from CBA negotiations, this was going to be her last time in front of a national audience outside of maybe coming on ESPN and and potentially voicing her opinions once again. So this was a time to really make a statement, and she did exactly what she needed to do. And given the state of the WNBA, given that they're going into a collective bargaining agreement, given the fact that this might be the most impactful collective bargaining agreement this WNBA conglomerate has ever faced, when you add in the backdrop of the popularity of the league over the last 2 to 3 seasons, the arrival of Unrivaled, which had a lot of public support, not just in terms of like fandom, but actual sponsorships and things of that nature. Bleacher Report got in on it. HBO Max got in on Unrivaled. There were different sponsors from NBA teams, PGA players, all types of all types of individuals either electing to involve themselves in Unrivaled as players or involve themselves in the growing of a separate league as sponsors. There's a lot of things in the backdrop from a business perspective that make this summer for the WNBA so important in terms of the trajectory moving forward. That doesn't even factor in the 2 expansion teams that are supposed to get draft picks this summer to kick things off for their inaugural seasons. I think she represented way more than herself in the best light that she could. I think she spoke for the league. I think she spoke for the players, which is what she's supposed to do. I think she spoke for the players in the best manner possible. And did she have to break a couple of eggs to get there? Yes. But I think she said what everybody as a player was thinking, has been thinking, and she did it. She did it on the platform she was supposed to get her point across.
One of the two best players in the league, voicing the concerns of many WNBA players going forward. These are the type of players you need making these
Yeah.
type of statements, Jay.
Oh, and Asia Wilson co-signed it in her most recent press conference as
She did
well.
too. Yeah,
Yep.
100%.
So
She did. Lots of WNBA players did. Glad to see. Even her even Coach Stephanie White was saying, "I'm glad that we have these girls trying to step up and like look out for themselves." I'm glad that she has basically, it feels like, unanimous agreements with the league, with the rest of the players. So yeah, crazy situation. Jade, before we go into the list of things that she said, I mean, because there's a long list of different things, but you could, because I just because I didn't hear your thoughts on this, the foul, the Alyssa Thomas last, the one like where she got injured. Do you think that was a foul or not?
dude, I mean, that was ridiculous. I mean, first of all, 30 seconds left.
Yeah,
Number one, let's throw that out there. 30 seconds left. A situation in which, like, the game was out of reach. This was not going to be a situation that was going to create some kind of momentum for Phoenix to steal the game away, right? Hey, bro, everybody saw it. That's the best way I can put it. Everybody saw it. It was unnecessary. It was unwarranted. And shout out to Alyssa Thomas because they ended up saving their series, honestly. Because being realistic, I think Phee, if she plays in game 4 with the momentum that Minnesota had in the beginning of that game, and especially with the way they were shooting the ball from 3, Phee plays in that game 4, Phoenix gets eliminated on their home court. I hate to say that a dirty play is the way that you get to the championship because, again, like I said earlier, I think Phoenix earned their stripes through this postseason playing 2 of the toughest teams in the league as their first 2 rounds and have to go see the MVP of the league in the finals to get the job done. I also think you stole one. I also think you stole one. It happened to be the biggest one. Game 4 was the biggest one, but I think you stole one off of a situation that I think A was avoidable and B I think is very telling about, again, going back to stuff like the officiating. Officiating wasn't going to change the injury, but officiating also changes the likelihood of Alyssa Thomas doing that, I think.
I kind of get what you're saying. I think there was a lot more blatant misses. I don't think that in particular would be something I'd be complaining about. Yes, she did
Okay.
run through her leg. It's just one of those things where it's like a playoff game and like that close to the stakes. I think we've seen this in the NBA before too. In those type of plays, I feel like the whistle is 50-50. And I do, like it's one of those like 50-50 whistles where you can go one way or another, just depending on, again, whether the WNBA referees want to swallow the whistle or not, even though they probably do swallow it more than you know more than players would like to. But
Mm.
I don't think that play in particular was bad. I think there was maybe a lot of stuff leading up to it that could have, that again feeds into Fee's talking points, which he said in the press conference, and just throughout the season as well. But that play, it's 50-50. You could have gone either way for me. So yeah, that's how I kind of feel about it. But in terms of like what she said, oh boy, Jay, this is like, besides what you talked about with the officiating, with the CBA agreement. By the way, the WNBA 5 hours before that press conference
Mm.
announced that they partnered with the USA Network to stream 50 games of the WNBA next season. So they're getting media rights deals, they're getting expansion teams.
It's getting serious.
It's getting serious.
Yeah.
Why isn't this money being going towards the players? Why isn't people are thinking of the profits, which the WNBA doesn't want to disclose, but people are talking about those negative $50 million, even though we don't truly know what those numbers mean.
Yeah,
How are they
I've
giving?
seen that stat too. Yeah.
But with all this money coming in from expansion teams, why aren't these going to the players? How come it's like that difficult to kind of figure out? So that's all I'll say for that. But she also said, when talking about officiating last offseason, Kathy Engelbert told her only losers complain about the whistle.
Yeah.
Collier also said that Engelbert told her that Caitlin Clark should be grateful for the $16 million that she makes off the court because the WNBA is responsible for a lot of those bunched up deals. Mind you, Caitlin Clark was one of the biggest athletes in the world prior to even being in the WNBA. So I don't know what she's talking about over there.
That's also kind of insane because we've literally had more recent WNBA players like Caitlin and Angel Reese kind of mention that the tax bracket they were in coming from college with the NIL deals like was
They're
completely
doing
different.
better. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're doing better there. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, she mentioned like like Phee mentioned to Kathy, we have players like Paige Beckers, Angel Reese, and Caitlin Clark making a bunch of money for this league. How come they're getting paid such little amounts?
Yeah.
And she said that the WNBA players should be on their knees thanking her for the media rights deals. Like, what?
Which is actually insane because, again, Unrivaled secured HBO Max / Bleacher Report to stream their entire season, their entire 3-on-3 season, which, mind you, had, I believe, 6 different teams. They
Yeah,
streamed their entire season. They have merchandise online, a true fan base that kind of rallied around them. But between what Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier were able to build last summer, and they have more participants coming in this upcoming season because Paige Beckers is supposed to play. Juju Watkins is actually a sponsor of the league, and I think is, well, obviously he's not going to play this season because she's not even set to play with
injured.
USC this year. But I think she's actually going to play in 2027. So like the star power around Unrivaled showed you like getting the kind of public support for women's basketball is not enough of the issue to say that like things like streaming deals are things to be quote unquote grateful for. The WNBA players went out themselves, created a 3-on-3 league, and got the streaming deal done themselves. Like what?
It's people are playing to see the players, and Kathy Engelbert sees it completely differently. And
Yeah.
now that that has been put to the light, I'm glad that Nafisa is able to say that. Like many people are saying, she's probably going to step down. I think that is the most likely scenario. And it really was capped off by her statement. I'm just going to read you the last sentence of her statement here. I am disheartened by how Nafisa characterized our conversations and league leadership, but even when our perspectives differ, a commitment to the players and to this work will not waver. Jay, she didn't deny anything that she said.
She just jump rope
She's,
through the question.
she jumped up it and she said, "I'm disheartened that Nafisa thought of that. That's what that's how she perceived the conversation."
Yeah.
So it's it's a mess.
Yeah.
People are saying doesn't matter if Kathy Engelbert gets gets replaced because it's just going to be the new shill for the ownership for next year. Who knows? But I just think in general, after this news came out, a change has to be made. So she's definitely gonna be out of there. I hope whoever comes in at least. I mean, to be honest, the commission, no matter who brings it in, they're not gonna be liked. But hopefully, they just like they can get the CBA agreement done, and hopefully, whatever it is, they can get agreement to because. I'm already more worried now than ever that there's going to be a delay in the WNBA season next season. And with the momentum that they got going on, and hopefully this finals continues to build on that momentum, you can't risk having like not being there at the start of next summer, man. We need to have this league keep going.
I mean, you're definitely not wrong. I think on the other side of it, though, TV, the most important thing is what you said at the end there was that it's about the CBA. Whoever's
It
the
is.
head in charge, that's cute. But we know that at the end of the day, there's a figurehead aspect to that more than anything. Don't get me wrong. There is a certain level of leadership that Kathy does provide. But this is about completing the CBA. This is about getting this done, getting players paid properly in conjunction to what they've been able to produce over the last 3 to 4 seasons. Particularly when it comes to the viewership. The viewership of this league has exponentially shot up over the last 2 seasons, particularly, and is only going to become more and more impactful as we move forward. Again, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts, they're coming up next season. Juju Watkins is up after that. Like this is only going to get more and more impressive in terms of the kind of cult following that the WNBA has grown over the last 2 to 3 years, given the fact that the talent is improving. The national media focus around women's basketball has never been as great as it's been right now. And then you pair that with the fact that the business side off the floor for a lot of these women is now brought them into a spotlight where people care about them as an overall brand, not just simply as basketball players. So the focus is on them 365 days of the year. We're used to the WNBA being like an interesting little focus, a little nugget of basketball info here and there for entertainment's sake. 3 to 4 months out of the year, and you don't hear about WNBA players for the rest of the year outside of if you get reporting about what they're doing in overseas leagues. Now, with the overseas play paired with Unrivaled, paired with a lot of the off the court stuff that they're doing in terms of sponsorships and things, these women are now topics of discussion 365 days of the year, which drives the ratings for this league when basketball is back and active on the floor. This is going to be about the CBA getting done more than anything. The figurehead for it is just simply the man with the message. But when it comes to the actual play on the floor, it's going to come down to and avoiding a lockout, I think is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's going to be about getting the CBA done. When the CBA
Hopefully,
gets done and hopefully is in a favorable light, at least a 51-49 type of thing in terms of agreement, because we know no agreements are always split 50-50 in terms of both parties being completely happy. But if there's a 51-49 split in terms of like being able to get something done, it needs to be able to get done, and that's going to be the most important thing.
100%, and hopefully they. Again. We're gonna see what happens with the commissioner stuff. Hopefully in the next month or so, and hopefully once that's sorted out, get back to the bargaining table. And even though it seems far right now, hopefully they can figure something out before next season so we can get this up and going. Because again, like we mentioned, as for fans, we want to see it continue going, but at the same time, we want the players to get as much as they possibly can. So hopefully they can figure that out soon. But yeah, we want to hear your thoughts on the whole Nafisa Collier press conference, all the talking points and stuff like that. We want to hear your thoughts down below. It's definitely one of the biggest talking points in sports yesterday, and hopefully they could figure out something soon. Because at least, like, I mean, even though it might be bad publicity, it's publicity that needs to be had, and hopefully now there's a stronger backing for the players of the WNBA.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on that. Let us know your thoughts on the WNBA finals, all that stuff. Let's move on, Jay. Time for part 2 of these 21 questions.
Yes, sir.
And we are weeks away from the NBA season starting. I think we are 20 days away exactly from the time of recording. We have the NBA preseason starting this weekend with some overseas games.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be previewing more about this NBA with the NBA 21 questions. Do you know how this goes? I'm going to propose a question to me and Jay. We're going to give our answers for each. And we're going to try and go through this whole 21 questions before the NBA season starts. Jay, are you ready for the next question?
Yes, sir.
Let's get into this. And the next question here is, I feel like something that needs to be that we discuss every single preseason, but this is going to be a big topic, especially around the trade deadline. And as we see from last year, anything is unpredictable.
Yeah, true.
So, what was the biggest name to be traded? I feel like we have in the past we have kind of like a certain pool of players that we think are going to be traded, but this year I feel like it's a bit more out there. So I want to hear, what do you think is the biggest? Who do you think is the biggest name going to be traded this season?
To me, personally, I feel like if the Utah Jazz are smart, this is the year to go ahead and move off of Lauri Markkanen. Um, and I know that sounds kind of crazy to say, given the fact that he still, he has the good majority of his contract still in front of him, but the guy's 28. Like, I know that kind of gets like, that feels like a moot point, but Lauri Markkanen is 28. Obviously, this is a player that is owed $46 million a year. It actually escalates up to $49.8 million when he turns 30, and over $53 million at age 31 before he becomes an unrestricted free agent. If you want to get the highest possible value for Lauri Markkanen, understanding that he is a former All-Star caliber player that has the chance to uplift another team and maybe potentially return a pretty strong haul with a good start to the season this year, because I think last year's start to the year kind of like dimmed his light a little bit. If he can have a strong start to this NBA season, by the NBA trade deadline, he needs to be a name that's really discussed, because I think the value is truly still there. And if you're a team that wants to grab a talent like Lauri Markkanen, who can play your 3 and 4, stretch big, put the ball on the floor, operate in space, if you want a talent like that, you also want to grab him before he turns 30. You want to be able to, you're going to get 2 pretty strong prime seasons left of him, or a season and a half, I guess, of him before he turns 30 years old. He's on a pretty lucrative contract as it is. He's also, when you look at the money he's owed, he's one of the easier superstars to trade for, where the Utah Jazz don't have to worry about the team he's traded to having to aggregate, right? In the days of the second apron, that becomes one of the bigger issues. If you look at the Jonathan Kuminga situation, the reason why him taking the qualifying offer would have made it so difficult for the Golden State Warriors is because he would have only been making $8 million this year, and he would have had basically a built-in no trade clause. Being owed that little amount of money in this day and age, with the way the NBA's business is set up, paired with the no trade clause, would have made him practically impossible to trade. Now he's owed about $23-24 million a year with the extension he signed. He's eligible to be traded as of January 15th. Now his salary is high enough to make him an interesting contract to move. Lauri's in a very similar state where he's owed so much money at $46 million that he's an interesting contract that the Utah Jazz can move, because he's, I think, arguably, not even arguably, he's easily their most lucrative contract on the roster right now.
For sure.
So he can be traded for some bad salary for another team, paired with some pretty solid draft capital. And I think this might be their last chance to really get decent draft capital out of him.
Yeah, I think like in terms of probably the nearest All-Star, it feels like he should be the one next to be traded, especially because he doesn't fit the timeline of the Utah Jazz at all. And
Nah.
he's still a very good player, as seen in FIBA ball, as seen over the time that he was healthy in the last couple of years. He's still a very good basketball player, and a lot of teams could use a Lauri Markkanen. Again, can the team make up $30-something million to trade in the regular season? Going to be tough, but I think that he is still going to be one of those like bigger like trade baits for this year. Someone else, Jay, that I had in mind here for the biggest thing to be traded. I mean, Kuminga feels like he should be, but
Yeah.
he should be.
I just didn't know if he kind of
Maybe.
has a star.
Yeah. I'm going to say Kobe White for mine. I feel like it should happen. It feels like the Chicago Bulls continue to be faced with these. It makes sense to do it. It's right in front of you. Expiring contract. You probably don't want to have a long-term backcourt of him and Josh Giddey, especially just signing Josh Giddey to that long-term extension. I don't know how well that's going to be for the long term. So it makes sense to trade someone who put up borderline All-Star numbers last year and try to get good value for him.
TV, there's a big phrase in there that you mentioned, though, that makes it very questionable.
It's the Bulls.
when you say it makes sense, or it should, usually when you associate the Chicago Bulls franchise with that phrase, you usually get the opposite of what you expect.
Yeah, 100%. So those are the few guys. I mean, the thing is, like, if like going to the season, there feels like there's like names that that you can always, go to in these type of situations. I feel like Kobe White's becoming one of those guys, but it's like you're right. Like you said, the Chicago Bulls, we don't know if they're truly going to do it. But Jay, ever since the Luka trade last year, I feel like all is fair.
Yeah,
Everything is fair
true.
game now.
Yeah, true. I mean,
Jay,
honestly, we're in a
if
weird
I'm gonna
spot.
if I'm gonna go for a super reach this
Okay.
season,
Mhm.
John Morant.
It's
John
not
Morant.
weird. It's not weird. John Morant's not weird. I've saw his name a lot. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Trae Young situation as well. They still have not extended him in a real way, and the contract extensions with him seem to kind of be stalling. He's in
Yeah,
a contract season where he could become an unrestricted free agent this upcoming summer, and they've retooled around him in a way that you think would build with his skill set. But also grabbing to kill Alexander Walker, some may make the argument that like maybe they brought in his replacement to start at point guard next to Dyson Daniels. You still have Zachary Ricochet at the 3. You have Jalen Johnson locked up, Onyeka Okongwu at the 4, at the 5. Like there's two ways to look at their situation. You can look at it as like, oh, they are building a roster that finally maximizes the team's biggest, the biggest strengths around Trae Young. The other side of it could be like they're building a team to deal with a post Trae Young era because maybe they don't want to pay him. Maybe they want to move Trae Young, get draft capital, maybe get a high draft pick this upcoming summer and get a new lead starting point guard. Maybe they try to shoot for the Darren Peterson thing. I don't know how they're going to get it with their team being as good as they are, but put themselves in position to maybe get a solid point guard in the draft and move on rather than paying for, what, 40-50 million dollars plus a year of Trae Young.
hey, I mean they have the Pelicans pick too, and we don't know like how crazy that's
True.
gonna be. But I was just looking at that freaking point guard market. I'm thinking of because I was thinking of guys like LaMelo Ball has like 2 more years left on his deal. Darius Garland, he's going to be one of the biggest like question marks whether he's going to be able to stay long term with
Yeah.
the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like I mentioned, John Morant. A lot of these guys who are going into their second big contract. It's
Hmm.
interesting to see that if these guys will be on the block this year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say John Moran is kind of like my big reach, but
Okay.
honestly, I was like fiddling around with the LaMelo Ball, Darius Garland, and him, just like trying to figure out between those three because I think it's definitely not off the table that these guys get moved.
I think there's a lot of prove it year going around at the point guard position as well,
Yes,
right? I think when you talk about those three guys that you mentioned, first of all, John Morant just needs to get back on the national media scene. He was one of the
ah,
darlings of the NBA just a few seasons ago as the it kid that seemed like all the love that Anthony Edwards gets now. That was what John Morant was just a few
three
seasons ago,
years ago, or
right?
just 3 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah. Now he's progressed into kind of like this like moot point within within NBA discussions when we talk about top point guards in the league and everything else. This is still a guy that's, top 20, top 25 in the NBA and just is not being discussed as such. Same thing could be said for LaMelo Ball. I think from a talent perspective, he's a guy who should be in the argument as a top 5, top 7 guy at his position, but the lack of winning play on the floor has really decimated his resume, paired with the fact that the man's just been hurt. Like, we need to see an all NBA caliber season out of him. And I'm not even talking about statistically, I'm talking about the amount of games played
yeah,
at this point, right? And
exactly.
Darius Garland, TV, I hate to keep beating the dead horse because I've talked about it all season, all off season. You're wearing the shirt right now, man. One of my teams that I think has the most to prove this upcoming season, despite how talented they are the Cleveland Cavaliers because I feel like they're a team that now look, you're coming. I get it. You get the benefit of the doubt that you went into the postseason injured last season. But this year, man, you cannot just be another regular season darling. You gotta be able to make some real
Yes,
noise in the postseason this year. You got rid of the coach, you brought in a new coach. Kenny Atkinson was that guy last year for y'all. Donovan Mitchell backpacked y'all through a series last season. Evan Mobley won DPOY. Jared Allen is continuing to improve. Darius Garland had a pretty injury riddled season himself last year, right? If this team isn't anything more than another regular season darling after moving off of one of their biggest, like, honestly, one of their biggest foibles last year was Isaac Okoro, believe it or not, despite the fact that he was very solid defensively for him, the fact that he couldn't space the floor really hurt their lineup because not only was he undersized for the 3-man spot, but he couldn't shoot the 3 ball like that. But then you have Max Strus, who's a competitive defender, but not a very good defender, but help space the floor a lot. Now you get Lonzo Ball. You still have Max Strus on the court with you. You had DeAndre Hunter for the entire season this year, as opposed to just getting him at the trade deadline. You bring back the core four guys in Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Jared Allen. Garland feels like the odd man out first because I think you can get the most value for him. So I wouldn't be surprised. I agree with you. Darius Garland is a name to watch as well, because out of anybody on that Cleveland Cavaliers team, if things start getting a little spicy and they gotta shake something up, the best potential trade chip they have right now that realistically will get moved is probably DG.
Yeah, 100%. Especially before he gets his next contract, he is definitely someone that could be on the table. But yeah, those are just a few guys. That's just look at the point guard market. That's all I'm gonna say. Coming in this upcoming season, maybe they're not in like trade rumors right now, but again, we've seen what trade deadlines in the past have done. A lot of these things could just materialize real quickly. So we're gonna have to wait on that. Jay, question 7 of the 21 Qs.
Okay.
Which star is facing the most pressure coming into this season?
This one feels both easy and difficult to me. And the reason why is just because as I mentioned a second ago, I feel like there's a lot of dudes that are in prove it years. But the guy that I think is the most interesting to me is Luka Doncic. Would some say he plays for the Lakers? Duh, he's always under a microscope. Agree with you. Totally fair. That could be one of the easier answers by itself when you talk about Luka Doncic. He plays next to LeBron James in the purple and gold. He's under a lot of scrutiny as it is.
Yeah.
But it goes deeper than that. Skinny Luka has gotten more MVP buzz than any other year we've ever seen with him. And there's been plenty of seasons, back-to-back years, where people had Luka Doncic as their preseason MVP favorite. But it's never looked like this before. It's never looked like this before. This Luka Doncic hype that's coming into this season is built off of more than just he's a talented player. He's a top 5 player in the NBA. No. He got his body right coming off of being traded from the Dallas Mavericks for not having his body right. He's coming into the first full season with the Lakers. Because remember, a lot of last year was kind of weird for Luka Doncic because it was an emotional roller coaster for him. You're coming off of one of the best seasons in Dallas Mavericks history. You're in a situation where now you get moved from the team. You're getting slandered in the media and slandered from your former team. And now you're in a different uniform when you thought you were going to be with your past organization for life. You thought you were the next Dirk, and a lot of us thought you were the next Dirk. Not only was your trade an indication that nobody's safe, but now it also became a trade that was an indictment on him. So this is not just proving that he's an MVP caliber player. We all know that. This is about proving your old organization wrong. This is about proving the stigma around the way he was in terms of work ethic, his physical build, all of those things over the past season, where a lot of people have said, if Luka Doncic were just in shape, how scary would he be if he was already a guy that led a team to an NBA Finals, built like that? Well, what would he look like if he was really in his mode? Now we get to see.
And what I think, like, what also adds the pressure to it is, I feel like the last 3 years we kind of put SGA, Luka, Giannis, and Jokic in a bubble by themselves as like the top 4. I feel like that has been the consensus top 4 over the past 2 to 3 years. And all those guys won championships. All these guys led their team to the championships already.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for Luka Doncic. Now it's his turn. Now I know it's a long-term deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. This is not just like a multi-year plan. This is something that you're going to want to be a part of for the next decade. But at the same time, the other guys around you have already got that chip. They already got the Finals MVP. Luka, it's your turn to see. I would definitely like that choice. But someone for me, even just as someone who we revere highly in just NBA circles in general, and like where we just like rank him among some of the best players in the league. Gee, what's LaMelo Ball gonna look like at the end of this year? What's LaMelo Ball? I feel like there's a lot of pressure on him. They thought that after that first couple seasons or so, that with the crazy numbers, the crazy highlights, that he's going to be the white hope of the Charlotte Hornets franchise. But they've been a mess from when he started in the Charlotte Hornets to even at this point. They're just as much of a mess. And over the past 3 seasons, Jay, he's only played 105 games. He's played 105 games. For me, this is more than just a prover year. Are you worth a max contract? Are you still an all-star caliber player? Because he's not been able to be on the court to do that. The numbers look great, but the efficiency, the leadership has been put into question. They've going into the season, that's one of the biggest talking points for the Charlotte Hornets in general. A lot of reports talking about how they're kind of questioning LaMelo Ball's leadership with the team, so that's going to be something to look at. I think as someone who we thought was going to be, for most of his career, a assurance for a top 30, top 40 spot, we really haven't seen that version of LaMelo Ball consistently enough over the past 3 years, and I think we're not going to put him like there with Zion where we're just completely giving up on him. I feel like we know what the injuries, because he's not really talked about like the Joel Embiids and the Zions when it comes to injuries.
Yeah,
he needs to be healthy this year. Not just he has to be healthy, he needs to show real improvement with the Charlotte Hornets team.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, the best that he's been able to see was back when Gordon Hayward was on the roster, and this team was barely cracking the play-in tournament where they were getting smacked up in the elimination stage.
Tournament, yeah.
Yeah. But TV, I think another thing that's very indicative of like a prove it season for LaMelo is look at the depth chart. It's not a coincidence. They had Trey Mann, they trade for Colin Sexton, and they bring in Spencer Dinwiddie. Not to mention, there was a lot of discussion around the on-ball chops of Con Knuppel back at Duke as a guy who could be a bit of a point forward Joe Ingles type. I don't think it's a coincidence that they brought in a handful of different guys that operate really well with the ball in their hands. I think this is a season where people are starting to kind of wonder in that Charlotte Hornets brass, like, yo, do we need to start trying to work this roster in a different direction than just building further out around LaMelo Ball? Grabbing multiple ball handlers, expanding your three-point shooting acumen by getting guys like Con Knuppel, and you bring in Pat Connaughton, who didn't have a great year last year, but is still considered a pretty solid knockdown three-point shooter at the 3 spot, right? Like, I think this Charlotte Hornets team, now their big-ass question is just the fact that they have Mason Plumlee starting at center. That's gonna be
boy.
That's gonna be a question all season long, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you move off of Mark Williams. That's gonna be its biggest question. But above that, arguably, is like, does this Charlotte Hornets team believe that LaMelo Ball is still the guy to build around?
Yes.
I don't think it's that they don't think he's a star. He's definitely a star player at the point guard spot. But is he worth building your franchise around? Is now the question you have to ask. This franchise is experienced trying to blindly build behind an all-star point guard in Kemba Walker once upon a time, and he's the best thing to have ever hit the franchise as far as I'm concerned. But how far did that take them? Does it feel like they're walking down another Kemba Walker road? It kind of does. So this is going to be a season that they have to ask themselves, in a year where the Eastern Conference is as big of a question mark as it's ever been.
Yeah.
It's ever been. If you're not somewhere in the play-in conversation at least, that's a big indictment. And honestly, this year, I think 7 and 8 are up for grabs. Keep it a buck with you. I think 7 and 8 are up for grabs. And Charlotte has to be one of those teams that finally steps into that space and takes it, even if they luck themselves up into it.
No, 100%. They have. It's gonna. I might talk about the Charlotte Hornets a bit more after, but the LaMelo Ball situation. Jay, he literally played 97 games his first 2 seasons of his career. Now he's played 105 over the past 3. Like, he just hasn't been able to be on the court. We know that the charisma's there. We know that the star power is there.
Yeah.
It's just about trying to see, like you mentioned, can the Hornets continue to rely on him as being a franchise cornerstone, being a franchise guy? This is the season that will determine all of that. And I think that's why I feel like he's going to be under a lot of pressure. I was good. There were some other guys I was thinking of, but I mean, in terms of like kind of their place in the league and like especially with their franchise in general, you need to get someone from LaMelo Ball this year and like at least see some sort of improvement with this Charlotte Hornets team.
Yeah.
Jay, let's move on to the next question. What team are you jumping on the wagon early? Now we've seen in the past, Jay. Last year you had the Detroit Pistons.
Mm-hmm.
The year before, the Orlando Magic. You kind of mentioned that team. Last year, I said I had to look back at last year, Jay. I said the New Orleans Pelicans, and we know how that season went. But Jay, this year, let's find our second favorite team. which team are you going to be jumping on the wagon early, and you're going to be kind of rooting along as the season goes on?
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So since I've started covering NBA basketball on podcast platforms, I've been a fan of the Denver Nuggets. The year before they finally cracked through to make the playoffs after that loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves eons ago. And that team has been good. They've been good and won a championship since. 3 years ago, the Light the Beam Sacramento Kings team was one of my
Oh
favorite
yeah,
teams
yeah.
in the NBA, and I called that one early on. That was one of the first iterations of this podcast, was one of the teams I was a big fan of. The Orlando Magic came after that. The Detroit Pistons came after that. The Orlando Magic made the postseason, pushed the Cleveland Cavaliers to 7 games, and dang near won that series on the road. The Detroit Pistons made the playoffs last year after being one of the worst teams in the NBA the season prior. TV, I'm coming back to the Western Conference this season, and it's the team you had last year.
No.
I'm gonna give New Orleans my shot this year. I'm gonna give them a little bit of the knockdown Jay lucky strike here, and see if my momentum that I've been building with my quote unquote bandwagon teams can permeate over to this interesting franchise, to say the least.
I'm surprised you've been dissing the Pelicans all off season.
I know, and that's the thing. That's why they're gonna be my bandwagon team. Let me set the record straight, because he's right. For anybody who's been a big fan of the podcast, first off, shout out to you for being a consistent listener. But you also know that this team I've had big question marks with. What they did this summer with the Atlanta Hawks trade for Derek Queen is one of the most interesting things you could do from an offense, from a front office perspective we've seen in quite some time. Just being quite honest. The storyline around Skinny Zion is also one that's been one of the more interesting ones of the summer. Obviously, that was one of the biggest takeaways from NBA media days. Like, yo, it's one thing for Zion to look a little more cut. We've seen that movie before. But this version of Zion looks different than anything we've ever seen, even dating back to his time back in high school. This is completely different. And that's why I like this team so much, TV, because NBA Media Day really sold me. I think we're going to see Point Zion for real this year. I think they're going to unlock Point Zion. I like Jordan Poole. They get Trey Murphy III back. Herb Jones back healthy. Center rotation is still a little wonky, but I like Kevon Looney for this team next to Yves Missi as like a solid 1-2 punch in that center rotation. Jordan Hawkins, I feel like, has to be a real guy off the bench, and I think he has the capability of doing that. I really do. Jeremiah Fears, is he a little undersized for the point guard position, in my personal opinion? Yes. I'm a little worried about, is he going to be able to score at the next level? But if he can put that ball in the hoop, if he can be Cam Thomas-esque, which I think he has the capability of doing, man, listen. Maybe I'm just jumping on the bandwagon for this team because I really want to see this Point Zion thing play out. And if there were any season to really try it, I feel like this would be the year. I'm giving them one last shot. When I say bandwagon team for me this year, this is gonna be my NBA League Pass team. This is gonna be the team that I think can really take a jump in the right direction. This is gonna be a team that I think has the storyline behind it that says they have to be better, right? Last year with Detroit, it was like, yo, bro, it don't get no worse than this. It don't
Yeah.
get no worse than this, right? The season prior was like one of the worst seasons in NBA history for the Detroit Pistons. They bounced back with a couple of veterans, and they have one of the best seasons in recent memory as far as their franchise is concerned. Probably the best since Blake Griffin last suited up for them, right? The New Orleans Pelicans, like last year, bro, the year prior was like injury bug galore, but like last year was like as bad as it gets, dog. They were the Indiana Fever of this year, last season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This year, Zion looks right. You got Jordan Poole. Maybe you put him at the 2. You put Zion at the 1. What's a universe where Zion plays the 1, Jordan Poole plays the 2, Trey Murphy III plays the 3, Herb Jones as a small ball 4, and you let Yves Missi or Kevon Looney start at the 5. You got Derek Queen come off the bench. Sadiq Bey, Jordan Hawkins, Jeremiah Fears, Jose Alvarado still on this team too. Like, what? There's a universe where this team can kind of have a jumbo wing led lineup, have some real scoring chops in the starting five, have some really interesting guys come off the bench. But again, like I said, the storyline, the headline of it for me is I got to see this Point Zion thing work out. NBA Media Day sold me. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. And I hope that the momentum I've had over the last couple of seasons rolls over for this team because TV, they don't have a choice.
They
TV,
don't.
they just gave up one of the most valuable 2020, not even just 2026. They just gave up one of the most valuable NBA draft picks of the next 3 to 4 years, bro. For Derek Queen. And no disrespect to Derek Queen. Straight out of Maryland. Everybody knows I live in Baltimore. Fan of Derek Queen. Like the move given the fact that next year's draft looks really crazy at the top. So they gotta be good this year, TV. They got to.
Yeah. Jay, you don't know how close I was to double dipping. I was so close to double dipping
Hey,
with the Pelicans,
hey.
but I just can't buy in. And the thing is, Jay, I was thinking about this throughout the week, and I was gonna be like, okay, no one's talking about the Grizzlies enough. Maybe I might choose that this year.
Okay.
Jay, Jaren Jackson Jr. is not going to be healthy to start the season. He's going to be out for 5 to 6 weeks. Zach
Yeah.
Edey's not going to be ready at the start of the season. Brandon Clark is. I don't remember the
Still
last
hurt.
time he was healthy. I don't
Yeah.
remember the last time Brandon Clark was healthy. So I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I want to put all my eggs in that basket. And I'm like, the Portland Trailblazers had a pretty damn good little year last year. Maybe it's the year. Jay, Scoot Henderson's going to miss the first 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. It's kind of wicked. And TV also, I know you have more integrity than that. And a lot of people are kind of fanning toward the Portland Trailblazers. And I know you have a little bit more integrity than that.
Jay, the funny thing is, if I wasn't a fan of the Toronto Raptors, I feel like the Toronto Raptors would be a good candidate
Bandwagon
for
team.
this.
Yes,
No,
I
good
completely
candidate
agree with that, TV.
would
That's so
be
funny that you say that. I
if.
agree with that.
But Jay, I know I've talked about this team a lot throughout this episode already. The Charlotte Hornets. I'll jump in.
Whoa.
I'll jump into the
Face first or we're both feet out. Cause
I'll go like shallow end. I'll be in the shallow end.
just a dip of the toe. Just a dip of the toe.
No. I'll be like you know how tall. I mean, like we're bigger dudes now, obviously, compared to when we were kids. Like up to like stomach level. I'm like stomach
Okay,
level.
okay. Respect.
Yeah, respect. But what I like about this team is they just have a lot of like good basketball players on the
True.
team. I feel like in terms of the way that they were built, is probably the best they've looked over the last 4 to 5 years, which is not saying much because this team has been an absolute mess. But
Mm-hmm.
the addition of Con Knippel, hopefully LaMelo, please stay healthy for me to be
Yeah,
proven right with this.
that's the
But you
one.
have these guys. You like you mentioned a healthy year of Trey Mann, who they brought back. Miles Bridges, hopefully, and this is the guy I'm like really like leading on for this. I love before his injury last year. I've been loving what I've seen from Brandon Miller, and I
Mm,
hope he does take that next step. I am worried about this team center rotation, but they just have players that could be on so many teams. Like 10-man rotation. When you look at a Grant Williams, when you look at a guy like a Colin Sexton, you look at a Spencer Dinwiddie, a Josh Green. Like, it just feels like a good collection of dudes. And I think with a weakened Eastern Conference, a second year under a new head coach, hopefully with a fresh training camp, I don't see. I'm checking the roster right now. Hopefully, there's not a lot of injuries going into the season.
they're pretty okay. They're actually pretty okay right now.
They're
Yeah.
pretty okay right now. Hopefully, Liam McNeely actually gets some good minutes as well. I know he might spend a lot of
Yeah.
time in the G League, but hopefully he gets some decent minutes throughout the season. In a weekend Eastern Conference, I don't mind buying into this team. I think this team's going to be fun in terms of a league pass team. I think this is a team that's going to be flashy. They're going to be young, so
Yeah.
they're going to be moving up and down the court. I think
Yeah.
this team might surprise a lot of guys and maybe be the Portland Trailblazers of last year, who they were getting like a nice end to the run. That's what I'm hoping for this team. Maybe knocking on the door of a play-in spot. I just want to see
Yeah.
real improvement from this team, and I'm just excited to see what this team does on the basketball court.
No, I definitely mess with it, and I commend you. Like I said, I told y'all, TV has more integrity than that, bro. Everybody's bandwagoning the Portland Trailblazers because last year they had this insane defense. You bring in Drew Holiday, they're in this situation where it seems like they're kind of playing
Hey,
kind of
Scoot,
forward
I was
now.
going to. Funnily enough, I was going
Yeah,
to, but freaking Scoot's injury like took me off, man. He took
but
me
don't
off.
get me wrong. This TV, I'm actually gonna take a second. I gotta glaze your Raptors real quick. I gotta glaze them,
Like,
and the reason why
hey,
is because
yeah, I'm glad because if you guys listen to the Eastern Conference over unders, man was trying to
yeah.
diss my boys.
Yeah, I had to glaze your Raptors a little bit because I listened back to that episode. I realized I was very foul to them actually, and the scary part about me feeling foul, being foul towards them in that episode, actually is that they were my honorable mention team that I was gonna go with as my bandwagon squad this year. And the reason why I didn't, obviously, because I didn't want to do three Eastern Conference teams in a row. Like I mentioned before, in the last 3 years, I did Sacramento, Orlando, and then this last year was Detroit. So I wanted to come back to the Western Conference. Of course, we're both Eastern Conference team fans as it is. So I
Yeah,
wanted to have my other team in the Western Conference this year do something different. But looking back at their roster and thinking about this year for their team, right? Because my biggest worry is Emmanuel quickly, and it has more to do with his actual what he's getting paid than what he actually brings to the table. But
yeah, 30 million is a
neither
little.
here, but that's a moot point.
Yeah,
The reason why I consider the Toronto Raptors as my like secondary team that I considered in this bandwagon conversation was because it's very similar to what you said about Charlotte, where it's like, bro, you guys do got some dudes. Like, I have to respect you.
yeah,
You guys have some dudes. I like Emmanuel quickly as a floor spacer. RJ Barrett stepped up a lot as a defender last season. I had to kind of respect him a little bit because I was a defender last season on the perimeter, especially towards the beginning half of the year. As we got kind of
I
further
mean
to
that's
the
when we were
play,
actually competing. At the end of the year, like you kind of
yeah.
like, yeah,
We got to the back half of the year, it was getting a little dicey there. But in the beginning of the year, where things were really competitive, things were looking forward in a real way. I like Colin Murray Boyles as a floor spacer at that four position for you guys. And the guy that I'm actually the most intrigued about, and it might be silly, I don't know. This dude, Jacoby Walter, is just interesting to me. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out
hey
why I'm
man,
infatuated with what he got going on.
hey man,
But
I will tell you as a Raptor fan and the Raptors fan base, we're ready to move. We're almost on the edge that we're ready to move off of Grady Dick and just let Jacoby have his minutes.
dude,
Like
this
it's
guy
to
just
that
plays
point.
super. He plays super hard.
He
Really
does.
energetic guy off the bench. I think he's going to be a really interesting player for you guys. I was watching a lot of his tape last night and the day before for some godforsaken reason when I was kind of like
I
studying
like
up on
I like
Toronto. Like I
I
said,
like Wobbs. I love
Toronto and New
Wobbs.
Orleans are those two teams that I was kind of bouncing back and forth between, and so I wanted to watch some film on them from last year to kind of get an understanding of like what brand of basketball I'm going to be interested in this coming season. And of course, the biggest question is like the full season of Brandon Ingram. Obviously, right? That's the one where it's like, okay, Brandon Ingram's talking about shooting more threes. Obviously, this is a guy that we know can be an interesting passer for this team. We know that Scotty Barnes has, really embraced the role as a potential like point forward for this squad in times where we've seen Emmanuel quickly go down. This is a team that does just have some dudes. I like Oshai Abaji on this squad. Grady Dick, I feel like, does need to kind of step into that three-point shooting role a little bit. We need to at least see like OG Duncan Robinson out of Grady Dick. I know Grady Dick has a little bit more on-ball chops than that, but at least as a three-point shooter, like we need to see that volume go up for this team.
Yeah, yeah,
So
we do.
somebody needs to eat those minutes when it comes to shooting the ball at a high clip. So we need to see more than just 36, 37% from beyond the arc. Like we need to see like 8, 9 attempts per game from back there to really make this team respectable from beyond the arc. But the biggest thing for me, if I had to put them in order, and the reason why I wanted to watch this, why I wanted to consider watching this team so closely, I still will. But as far as picking bandwagons, I went with New Orleans. But the reason why I thought about Toronto is the Brandon Ingram element is number one for me. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he looks like on this team. Number two, like I said, this infatuation with Jacoby Walter, I got to figure it out. I'm going to try to figure out what the heck is going on with it. But I think that guy just has to play. That guy has to play.
He will.
He's
He
listed
will.
as the third string small forward slash shooting guard for this team right now on ESPN. I don't know if that's how it's going to end the season. I
It's
really don't. I
it's not.
really
It's
don't.
not. Don't worry. It's not how it's going to start the season either. He's going to get minutes. He'll get
And then
minutes.
Colin Murray Boyles, look, ninth overall, stretch 4 looks like a guy that should be able to play on this team and get some real minutes. I just got to see it. I can't even tell you the last time we saw a true stretch 4 on the Toronto Raptors, honestly. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like, where with Grady Dick, Colin Murray Boyles, Brandon Ingram says he's planning on shooting more threes. Like, what does the spacing on this team look like now, this upcoming season? That's like a little underlining thing I'm going to be paying attention to. So had to glaze the Toronto Raptors a little bit. I realized I went a little hard on your boys last week. Got to respect them a little bit more. I'm actually a little interested in what they got to do. Don't know what their postseason hopes are this upcoming year, obviously. But a team that I think is going to be really exciting to watch if you kind of tap into some of those little storylines.
Oh no, I won't. This one, if you are going to be tapped into the Raptors, this is the last thing I'll say before we move on to the next question. Is expect a lot of open shots. Darko's offense is very pass heavy. He loves the off ball movement. So we're gonna, in terms of developing open shots, we're gonna get open shots. One, because teams will disrespect us, and I get it. And two, Darko's offense just generates a lot of 3-point shots. It's all about making them, and that's the biggest thing that you're gonna be looking at. That's one of the things that Raptor fans are gonna be looking at. But if you want to see low key some beautiful basketball, Darko has the offense. The Raptors just need to finish some of them to make them actually like highlight worthy.
You guys were one of the top teams in assists per game last year, right?
And we would have been higher if our guys could actually hit some shots. We actually would have been higher.
This team is not this. Like I said, I might have went a little hard on them boys last time. This team is not bad. I don't know if they're a top team. I don't know if they're a top 8 team in the East this year. That's going to be all dependent on how their starting 5 plays to me. But this team is not bad. This team is not bad.
Okay.
Not at all.
You know what, Jay? I forgive you for what you said on the Eastern Conference. So, hey, even if we're an honorable mention, we'll take it. Welcome to the fam. But yeah, we'll move on to the next question. We got 2 more questions before we head out. Number 9. What NBA storyline is not being discussed enough? I feel like we did this as something from last year, but I'm going to bring it back this year because I feel like this was a good conversation. So what NBA storyline is not being discussed enough?
I loved this question, and I was mulling over this so much. And maybe it's being discussed more than I think. Maybe I'm just missing out on the Twitter spaces. I don't know. But is anybody ready to have the conversation about what happens if the Sixers have another washed year? Like, I don't think anybody's really ready to have that conversation. Last year, it already looked so difficult, and it was starting to swirl these convos around. Wait a minute. Should the Sixers fans were starting to have debates on whether or not to trade Joel Embiid. Mind you, a season prior, they were banging the table for him to win MVP. The last 2 seasons prior. Paul George. The discussion around him all last year. Worst contract in the NBA. Even worse than Bradley Beal on a no trade. It was wicked. Jared McCain goes down with injury. And he's coming into the year with an injury too, because I believe he tore his UCL in his hand and his shooting hand. He's coming into the year injured. Right? They're already going to have to lean on VJ Edgecombe a little bit to start off the season. We already have our questions around whether or not Joel Embiid and Paul George are going to be able to play a significant part of the year. Joel Embiid already said, dating back to last season, I can't play back-to-backs anymore. It's just built in now. Paul George says this is the most rejuvenated he's felt in quite some time. Paul George says that after every bad season. That's just kind of built into his kind of media spiel of how he comes back after a rough year. The Sixers are one of those teams that everybody knows should be good. The Sixers are one of those teams that everybody looks at the paper. They just also were able to get Quentin Grimes back on the qualifying offer earlier today. That should be interesting. Everybody looks at the paper and says, why isn't this team being discussed as a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference? Right? Why isn't this team discussed as the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference behind Cleveland and the Knicks? Because that's what a lot of the power rankings say.
No one trusts them.
A lot of the power rankings have Cleveland number 1, the Knicks number 2, and then is it Orlando? Is it Atlanta? Is it Milwaukee still with Giannis? But Philly never comes up. It's because nobody knows what to do with Philly. And I think even Philly doesn't know what to do with Philly. And that's why I think it's an underrated storyline, because I feel like Nobody knows what to do with them. And in a year like this, where this might be one of their best chances we've ever seen, and Philly's had quite so many, including that 2019 year against you guys. That looked like one of their best chances to win an NBA championship. This might be one of their best chances to come out of the East in quite some time, just given the state of the Eastern Conference. Yet nobody views them as this type of team. So what happens if they somehow underperform even the expectations they should have this year in a weakened Eastern Conference? Is Joel Embiid still in Philly? Can you even move Paul George's contract? What do you do with Tyrese Maxey given the fact that you just signed him to an extension? Kyle Lowry's back practically out the door after, I believe, one more season.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions around this team, and one more bad year ain't going to help their situation. And we already had this conversation on the first 5 questions from the 20 questions. You asked me who the hottest seat in the NBA was from a coaching perspective. The answer was easy to me. Nick Nurse. You can make him the bad guy, but how bad does he really make this team where you can use him as the sole scapegoat and try to run this team back another year if this season goes bad? I don't know. So that's the team. That's the team, and that's the question.
It is the question. The only reason I feel like people are not talking about it enough is because, like, we just know that this season is going to go one or two ways with the 76ers. It's like you mentioned, everything's going to fall apart and legitimately fall apart because this team just gets injured year after year.
Yep.
Or there's a chance because they have the talent. I mean, it's not looking great because Jared McCain already injured his thumb before the season even started. But they have the talent to be, like you mentioned, a top 3 seed. But I feel like a lot of people, the reason why they're not talking about the 76ers is because we're just sick and tired of playing this game with the 76ers. And it's to the point where people just don't care. And I think like people are like, we know what Joel Embiid's gonna do. Paul George, unless he like has a true resurgence here, gets back to an all-star level, no one's gonna talk about it. And then we want to see Tyrese Maxey in a good situation, but it's just like it's such a weird built team. Like you mentioned, like the talent is there to be a top 3 seed, but we know that this team could falter to the point where they could be a bottom 5. Nick Nurse is on the hot seat. They're just because we just don't know. And I feel like it should be a talking point because we just don't know what the 76er team. But I feel like we've been playing this game for the past like near decade at this point with the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's okay, which season we're going to have with the 76ers now? Are we going to finally have are we going to rebound with the playoff season or just not? So it's definitely a good storyline to talk about. For mine, for me, I don't think enough people are talking about the Memphis Grizzlies to the point where I feel like they already got rid of one domino, which is Desmond Bane.
Mm-hmm.
And how much further are they willing to go? Because John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane have been together for 5 years. They peaked at what? It was the second round of the playoffs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But then the injury issues with John Morant. Yes, they just re-signed Jaren Jackson Jr., but like I mentioned earlier, is John Morant a full guarantee to be on this roster long term? At this point, I don't know. And we know the shelf life of these athletic point guards, Jay. It doesn't once they start creeping up to the 30s, early 30s, they're not looked at as fondly as much. John Morant's already 26. 25, I think 25, 26. The same questions that we have with Zion. I know people talk about his injuries a lot. John Morant has been injured a lot these last couple of years too.
Yeah.
Is his future safe? Is Jaren Jackson? I feel like his future safe for now, but at the same time, it's like because he signed the max extension. But they already got rid of one Domino and Desmond Bane. They got rid of Dylan Brooks a few years back. I think that the Memphis Grizzlies are in a year of where it feels like they have the talent to potentially compete for a play-in spot and potentially like a 6 seed in the West.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just still so much question marks on this team, and I feel like not a lot of people. It's just not much of a talked about storyline. Maybe because it is Memphis and because it is Memphis. Whenever you bring them up, people are just gonna bring up John Morant Instagram videos. But I feel like the squeezing of the juice of the Memphis Grizzlies is wearing out, and I think that there's gonna be some even more changes going forward.
All I'm gonna say with that one, TV, is you mentioned the Desmond Bane trade, and I think that's really important because a lot of people didn't even think that was a guy on the move, right? Nobody really thought that was going to be a dude on the trade block to begin with, the way this team was kind of heading. I don't think it's a coincidence that this team has their first round pick in their own, mind you, their own first round pick in 2026, 2027, and 2028. And they didn't have a first round pick of their own in 2029. And they got a pick swap to get the swap for Orlando's first round pick in 2029. So this team has their own first round pick the next 3 years, including a first round pick for the Orlando Magic. The year that Paolo Banchero is going to be on an expiring, Franz Wagner is going to be
Yeah.
on an expiring, Jalen Suggs is going to be on an expiring, Desmond Bain is going to be staring at an expiring. I don't think it's a coincidence that this team set themselves up to basically have 4 straight years of first round picks that should be interestingly favorable, where they're like middle of the pack or better. Because let's be honest, a lot of people aren't talking about this Memphis Grizzlies team right now because we don't know where to place them in a tough Western Conference like this one, too.
Yes.
So that could be 4 straight years where, you picking like either near the lottery or right there in it. Maybe they're already looking towards a future past John Morant, and we just have to wait for, like you said, that next domino to fall. It looked like they put a lot of priority around re-signing Jaren Jackson Jr. this summer. A lot of the cap flexibility felt like they prioritized being able to get a contract extension done with Jaren Jackson. So what does that really mean? I don't really know. But the next guy, and you mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the most likely superstar to get traded, is what happens with Ja. Because Ja feels like the guy that actually is the biggest odd man out more than Triple J is.
Yeah, because he's already settled, and Ja. The thing is, like, we have a good sample size now of what they do as a duo. We know kind of like where it peaks, and we thought it was going to continue to go. But then with the injuries that went on, the amount of turnover within the roster, there was just the team just didn't get to. We thought it was going to be them and OKC, right? I remember we were having this conversation a couple of years ago with you,
Yes.
where they were going in that same direction. Well, OKC continued to go up here. Memphis is starting to go down.
Yep.
So, do they want to commit to another half a decade of John Moran and Jaren Jackson Jr.? I don't think they will. And I think people are not like tapped into that. And that means that we have a borderline top 5 point guard, John Moran, potentially on the move sooner rather than later.
That's tough to come to that conclusion, but I think a lot of the things with Memphis have indicated that, like, I think the first real domino, the patient zero, if you will, was the Dillon Brooks thing.
Yeah.
I think that's the patient zero of this. I think this franchise is looking for a little bit of a makeover. And I think more particularly from a lot of the gritty swagger stuff they had going on. Dillon Brooks, remember, that was the linchpin for that.
Him and Ja were the guys. Him and Ja were the guys who are at the forefront of that.
Yeah, Dillon Brooks had the entrance, the game entrance dance celebration that was going crazy all over social media. Ja Morant obviously is one of the most interesting players in the league with how athletic he was. ESPN top 10 dunks every single night, it felt like.
And
the
just
infatuation was there. It's like, the YN's favorite NBA player was Ja Morant, right? That's what everybody says, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like Memphis just doesn't want that smoke anymore. I think they're trying to reconfigure themselves away from something even further from like the grit and grind era, right? Because I feel like there's a certain part of this that feels like it's slowly but surely rounding itself not into like the grit and grind era from a play style perspective, but from a personality perspective. And I think that Memphis is trying to button themselves up to be something a little bit different than that. And I think it started with Dillon. I think Desmond had a little something to do with that. And I think you might have a point that Ja might be next on that chop block.
Yeah.
It just depends on what that makeover really means to them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I feel like this is going to be a year, again, prove it for a lot of these guys. And I think one of the biggest lenses is going to be on Ja. If we're not going to get back to that 27, 28 point per game guy who is electrifying the league, especially now with the post injuries, I don't know what direction the Grizzlies are going to go now, and that might not include John Moran in the future. So it's going to definitely be something to look out for. Jay, final question before we end today's episode. Plain and simple. Who's gonna have the biggest impact as an offseason addition to any of these teams? Who's gonna have the best offseason signing, like in terms of impact?
So my honorable mention is a coach.
Oh.
And the reason why is because I think that it's going to matter so much, and that's Mike Brown. This team, this New York Knicks team, had themselves an offseason. Not too many people are going to talk about it outside of New York, but this team, they had themselves a strong offseason. You add Gershon Yabusele, who had a career year last year with Philly. You add in Jordan Clarkson, who's been raring to play meaningful basketball for like the last 2 to 3 years now, as a guy who's always been like a fringe 6-man of the year caliber candidate. You bring in Malcolm Brogdon, who sounds like, from all the interviews he's had since joining the team, just wants to take the pressure off of Jalen Brunson. Probably the biggest issue with the team last year was that there was too much pressure on Jalen Brunson. And a lot of that had to stem from that guy, a very familiar guy in my heart, Tom Thibodeau, right?
Yeah.
So Mike Brown, you turned around Sacramento. You joined a staff with the Golden State Warriors where you were a defensive coordinator for them, and they were a top 5 defense in the NBA when you were there. The New York Knicks already have an infrastructure of a team that's gritty, that's going to play hard, that can shoot, score. Now they have real depth because we got to add Miles McBride in there. Obviously, is another guy off their bench that I think is going to be really solid. But the biggest thing is that I think Mike Brown's philosophy around managing the depth of this roster is going to be so different from Tom Thibodeau's, because now he has 2 to 3 years of sample size to say, yo, whatever that guy was doing wasn't working. 40 minutes a game for my stars? What are we doing here? And they have the depth to circumvent that. It's not just that he can change the philosophy by making sure, hey, Jalen Brunson, hey, Mikal Bridges, hey, OG Anunoby, y'all not playing 48 minutes no more. It's not just that he can make that decision, because of course he can do that. You can do that without the talent. But it's the fact that now they have the talent depth-wise to circumvent that. They have an entire second unit. Whether you start Mitch Rob or you start Gershon Yabusele, now you have one of those coming off the bench at the center spot. You have Miles McBride. You have Malcolm Brogdon. You have Jordan Clarkson. You put yourself in a position to be able to maximize that. And now they feel like a team that can actually play through the regular season with the postseason in mind. Right? This is a team that just, every season for the last 2 to 3 years, we play hard every night. 48 minutes of elite defense, 94 feet. And we can hang with anybody in the Eastern Conference. It sounds good. But when you get to the postseason, you fall apart like a rusty old car because you ran the tires dry the whole 82 games of the regular season. This feels like a team that can allow themselves to actually kind of coast a little bit, win 45, 50 games comfortably, and put themselves in position to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, and then have the bright lights cut on for guys like Jalen Brunson, for guys like OG Anunoby, for guys like Karl Anthony Towns, to then show up in the right moment. So Mike Brown, to me, he was my honorable mention. My main name, from player perspective, is CP, and for obvious reasons. Not only is this the farewell tour, so he playing with a different kind of chip on his shoulder as this being his last chance to go win that chip. TV, everybody knows the stats. Every single team that Chris Paul goes to gets better. Everybody knows that. And he's coming back to an LA Clippers team that, at least from an on-paper perspective, is arguably as talented as any team he's played on. All the Kawhi Leonard off the court stuff subsided. The guy's still an all-star caliber player when he plays at least 50 games. James Harden's coming off of an All-NBA year. Ivica Zubac was in DPOY convos last year, and that didn't even take up for the fact that he was one of the better offensive centers last season, underratedly. You bring in Bradley Beal. You got Derrick Jones Jr. You got John Collins. You bring back Nicholas Batum, who's like one of the best connectors in the league. Don't even know how that guy's still on the court for teams in this day and age with how old he is, but the guy just knows how to play good basketball. This might arguably be like the most complete team he's played on. You pair that with the fact that he's just a walking floor raiser, I I think this Clippers team has to be watched, and not just their pockets. I know y'all gonna make jokes. Not just their pockets. Don't just watch their transactions. You got to watch this team on the floor too. I think this is a team that needs to be paid attention to, and I think CP is gonna raise the stakes for this team.
No, oh no, 100%. It's a great signing, 100 for sure. Especially when you know that even like in his later years, he's still definitely reliable to stay on the court. He's still played like long ass seasons, and the only reason I don't consider him to like, I mean, the thing is that the Clippers are a good team already. Like, how much more can he like raise them? That's the question. But I think he's going to be key, especially come to playoffs, because you know this Clipper team is probably going to be in the playoff mix. I think we're going to see his true value when it comes to there, and you're going to see plenty of scenarios in the playoffs where he's going to be finishing games, and I'm excited to
Yeah,
see what that's going to look like. He is his last chance. He's going to do it with the team that he was best known for. I'm excited to see what CPC could do over there on the Unction. The Unction is truly in effect. I swear there's another
yeah.
team that's being called the Unction now. I forgot, like, because the Warriors, because they're signing a bunch of old dudes too. I've
It's
seen
getting
their
wicked over there, boy.
getting old. Freaking Seth Curry, Al Horford, all them dudes getting signed. And we can have the California Unks, man. Let's see
For
that.
real, yeah. Cali's in a weird spot right now as far as older players are concerned, dude. I'm not gonna lie, that whole spot, even with Sacramento with Demar,
Yeah,
like
oh,
that
they
whole spot is
alone. They
yeah,
got all these dudes, and they got freaking Luka Doncic just chilling on an island by his own.
right,
Yeah, it's gonna
bro.
be crazy. But yeah, for myself, biggest impact off season edition. I feel like this is gonna be pretty common among some people, but I just love the fit overall, and it
Hmm.
made just so much sense when the move happened. I'm gonna love Cam Johnson on this Nuggets team. Cam Johnson on this Nuggets team, like replacing Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, you're not gonna get the athleticism. You may not even get the same sort of on the ball ability. But if
Hmm.
I can imagine someone that could fit next to Nikola Jokic, play
Yeah,
solid defense,
yeah,
and just knows how to work off screens, knowing his spaces on the floor, Cam Johnson is that type of player. And the fact that you're able to save money on Michael Porter Jr., bringing Cam Johnson as the perfect plug and play guy for this Denver Nuggets team, I think he's going to do absolute wonders for them if he can stay healthy. The 3-point
yeah.
shooting is going to be massive. His ability to cut to the rim, and just still bring size to that perimeter, man. Him and Aaron Gordon over there, one guy sitting in the dunker spot, one guy sitting in the corner for three. I think this Denver Nuggets offense is going to be absolutely lethal, and Cam Johnson in place for Michael Porter Jr. is going to be more reliable just to stay on the court, and especially deep into playoff moments. And I think he's just a perfect guy to put next to Nikola Jokic and on this roster in general. I'm such a huge fan of this fit, and I can't wait to see how those two in particular, Jokic and Cam Johnson, work well together this season.
I'm gonna give it a buck, dude. I wouldn't be surprised. Not really a hot take or anything, but like Cam Johnson might lead the league in catch and shoot threes this year. Both like attempts per game and percentage. Like that dude with Nikola Jokic passing him the ball, like he's never had a passer that elite before. He played next to
Yeah.
Chris Paul. But like this is him playing next to Nikola Jokic with another real gravity spacer and Jamal Murray next to him and being in a position where like this team just plays a lot faster than that Phoenix Suns team did. They operated so much in the half court because they relied so much on that mid-range game. On
Yeah.
this Denver Nuggets team, they play so much faster because they have the athletes for it. They have Jamal Murray, they have Aaron Gordon. Obviously, Nikola Jokic is one of the best passers in the league, one of the best passers in NBA history. Cam Johnson, he just has to come in there and be a sniper. Just be a
Yeah.
sniper and guard. Just be a sniper and guard high. You're gonna eat. This dude's gonna average 15 points calm with most of his shot attempts per game being from beyond the arc, and he should be because he's gonna be playing next to one of the best guys to set him up in the league. I think he's gonna. I think this new. He should be up there with in the territory of where like Malik Beasley was last year in terms of 3-point attempts per game. And on this Denver Nuggets team, like he should be one of the most efficient guys from beyond the arc next season. Like it's
No,
gonna be
yeah. It's gonna be crazy. He hasn't played next to someone this good at like passing the ball since probably Chris Paul on the days at the Phoenix Suns, and he was a perfect like number 4 guy on that team. So imagine like his role here with the Denver Nuggets. I think he's going to fit absolutely perfectly, especially after the last couple of years where he was rotting over there in Brooklyn. Gets to play for a real contender, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what Cam Johnson's going to be able to do. Let us know what you guys think down below. For any of these 21 questions, we want to hear some of your answers to these ones. Obviously, the WNBA topics earlier, we want to hear your thoughts on theirs as well. Lots of good basketball coming up with the NBA, but man, you got to tap into the WNBA too. This NBA Finals is going to be absolutely crazy, so make sure you check that out. Jay, we've reached another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Ladies and gentlemen, NBA season is around the corner. WNBA Finals is around the corner. Basketball's in a good spot. College basketball is already dropping their coaches polls, so I'm reading those, trying to learn about some of the most interesting teams in the country. Paired with the fact that you got to keep tabs on some of these NBA prospects that should be in a good spot as well. Man, basketball is back, guys. Basketball is right around the corner in terms of like just everything. We're finally getting players back on the practice floor. We're getting games this upcoming weekend. We're getting the WNBA Finals to cap off what's been a really great WNBA season so far, despite all the drama off the court.
Yeah,
Basketball's in a good spot. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, I don't know what the heck you're doing because you're going to be missing out.
yeah, no, you better be tapped into the hit your free throws again. If you want to hear stuff all about the WNBA finals, we're going to be tapped in for sure on that. We're going to be talking about more about the finals as well next week. And then all this NBA stuff, the preseason games, all of these rumors, these quotes coming from the NBA Media Day. There's gonna be a bunch of stuff being put up on the channel. We have the NBA All Time Draft coming out soon. We have a bunch of content coming out. The NBA season is right around the corner. It's the Hit Your Videos podcast is going to be locked in. So make sure you follow us on anywhere. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just make sure that you know what Hit Your Videos podcast is, and you're going to get all the best basketball content. We can reassure you of that. But yeah, Jay, it's been an awesome episode. Thank you guys for watching. Remember, we're going to be back next week with another episode. We're going to have the NBA All-Time Draft episode launching this weekend. So be on the lookout for that as well. But yeah, it's been a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.